sit down to study. You have your exams in a fortnight and you are trying very hard to concentrate. But you have your mobile phone right there at the desk with you. Suddenly, you hear that little notification sound. A message has arrived. Now the question is, how many of you would actually go and check that message right then and there? I certainly would. And I'm pretty sure that majority of the people watching this video are going to do that. Now let's take another example. Say the coronavirus pandemic has finally ended and we are all heaving a sigh of relief and all of us want to travel. Now you are one of them. You are ready to go on that trip. You've been waiting to go forever. You're booking a hotel for you and you log on to one of the bookinghotels.com site. You browse through all the hotel options that are available to you. Now, how many of you would actually select the hotel based on the ratings and the reviews it has got? Most of you, right? Before we proceed further, let's do a quick exercise. You have two options in front of you. You are at ground level of a mall and you have to climb, say, till the first floor. There are two options available. One is escalators and the other is staircase. How many of you would actually take the escalators versus the staircase? Multiple studies have shown that people actually prefer taking the escalators over the staircase. But let's say there's a little twist in the story. What is the twist? Say the stairs are modified a bit to look something like a racetrack. Interesting, right? Or better still, say the stairs look something like this. That is, each step or a couple of steps later, you actually get to know how many calories you're burning while climbing the staircase. Now, how many of you would actually take the stairs now instead of the escalators? You would actually be surprised to see that people actually switch. Instead of taking the escalators, if there is a little modification in the kind of staircase they have in front of them, they prefer to take the stairs over the escalators. What does this tell us about human behavior? What does this tell us about how humans make choices? Human behavior can actually be a mystery. Why do people behave in certain ways? Or how can we anticipate how would they behave? Or is there actually a pattern to their actions? These are the kind of questions that behavioral economists think about when they are designing a policy. In each of the above examples, you would notice that the choices you had were the same. So for example, in the first option between opening and not opening the message, you had only two choices. You had to pick only one hotel from the multitude of hotel rooms that were available to you. Between escalators and staircase, you had to pick only one. But which option do you choose for depends on how they are presented to you. So, you notice that if you receive a notification, you are actually prompted to open that message right then and there. Similarly, if a hotel has multiple ratings and reviews, you are inclined to choose that hotel over a hotel which does not have any reviews. Between escalators and staircase, you decide between them based on how they are presented to you. So what are nudges? Nudges are nothing, but these are tiny changes in the environment that can actually help people make better choices for themselves, for the society, without restricting their freedom of choice. But all this is good. The major question is, how does it affect us in our daily lives? Well, it does affect us, both in a micro manner as well as a macro manner. And this is what we are going to discuss today. Let's look at a few micro examples. How does it affect an individual? So let me share an anecdote from my childhood. I come from a middle class family and the kind of resources we had as we were growing up were quite limited. Money was limited, and as children, me and my sister, we were taught how to respect money and not to waste money. So we were not given any pocket money as such, but whatever little money we got from our relatives during family functions, etc., we were asked to keep it with ourselves. So at the age of 12, my mother introduced me to the concept of saving. So she said there are 3S in our lives. What do these 3S stand for? These are save, share and spend. To explain these concepts, she did a simple exercise. She gave me 3 piggy banks, all different sizes, all with different purpose. Just to give you an idea, the piggy banks were something of this sort. The biggest piggy bank was for me to save my money. I was to set aside some portion of the money for things I wanted to buy in the future. Maybe for my birthday or the new year, etc. I remember at that time I was a big Harry Potter fan and I would save that money to buy a new book on my birthday. The middle-sized one was for me to share. I would keep aside a little money from which I would buy things which I would share with my little sister. So whether it was an ice cream or a new painting kit or a new toy, I would just keep aside a little money to share. Then the smallest of those piggy banks was for me to spend the money. The purpose was clear. It was to cater to my whims and fancies. So for example, I remember that once we had gone to a stationery shop and I loved a new glitter pen there, a glitter pen. So I really wanted to get it, and my mother ensured that I actually spend the money from the little piggy bank that I had. The idea of this exercise was threefold. First, to help me understand the idea of savings. Second, to encourage sharing habits. And the third, basically the broader idea, was to help me learn how to manage my finances. What I didn't realize at that time, and probably even my mother did not realize, and probably still doesn't, is that she was unintentionally using nudge to help me learn these 3 things. Let me explain. Let's look at the 3 piggy banks again. So the saving piggy bank, as you can see, was the biggest. I had to put in the maximum amount of money in there if I wanted to fill it up. This was basically a nudge to help me save the maximum amount of money that I had. The smallest piggy bank was for me to spend. This encouraged me to limit my expenses to the bare minimum. Hence, by this method, my parents basically tried to inculcate good money habits in me and my sister from a very early age. Today, instead of piggy banks, I use an app to track my finances. This way, I am able to cut down on areas where I do not really need to spend on, and I am able to save more and invest more. So, let us consider another interesting example. I was very anxious when I was writing my board exams for the first time. So in class 10, when I was preparing for my board examinations, a close relative of mine suggested a very simple technique to help motivate me. So she suggested that why don't you print out a few inspirational quotes and put it up on your study desk. I did as I was told. I actually printed out 3-4 inspirational quotes which actually motivated me, and I put it right across from where I studied. Now every time I sat down to study, I would actually go through those quotes and I would feel very motivated to study harder. This actually helped me a lot. It helped me build confidence. Seeing those quotes reminded me that I was worth it, I could do well, I could actually put in the hard work that I was required to do. This was a positive reinforcement for me, and it helped me develop a very positive, optimistic outlook in my life as well. This was again a nudge helping me in a very positive manner. Let me share another very simple technique that can help you make your life better and can help improve your quality of life. So everybody knows that for a healthy life, we need to have healthy food. But a lot of us would actually not have the adequate amount of fruits or the adequate amount of water that we need to have in a day. What is the simplest technique to actually start eating more fruits or drink more water to keep yourself hydrated? Very simple. Keep the fruits or the water bottle at eye level, whether it is in your refrigerator or whether it is at your work table or wherever you spend the most time with, keep it at the eye level. The more you see those fruits, the more you see those water bottle, the more amount of each of those items you'll start having. Do it for a week and then you'll notice the difference. So this was the micro picture. Let's have a look at the macro picture. So can such a simple tool of behavioral economics help solve bigger problems? Let's discuss that. While nudge theory as a theory in itself is not very old and there is very limited research published as of now, but it is being used extensively by companies in the form of nudge marketing, by NGOs to get more donations, by governments for effective policy implementation on a routine basis to actually use different aspects of behavioral economics and encourage people to make better choices for themselves and for the society. For example, hashtag selfie with daughter. How many of you actually heard about it? This actually became a worldwide hit. Hashtag selfie with daughter. And all the social media was flooded with it. This was basically a celebration of the girl child. And it quickly became a norm to which more and more people wanted to conform. Similarly, use of socially and culturally identifiable names for various recent schemes like Namami Gange, Ujjwala, Poshan Abhiyan, among others. These have helped build the affinity of the people for the scheme. Swachh Bharat Mission is one such live example. So let's look at a few more macro challenges. I'm going to discuss 3 macro challenges and what different countries did across the world and what India could do. Right? So first is controlling pollution. A huge menace, right? Most of us who are living in metro cities would agree with that. What the Chinese government did was a very simple technique. They built a nationwide network of monitors tracking the levels of PM 2.5. PM 2.5 is what? These are basically tiny combustion particles and these can penetrate deep into your body and cause not only breathing problems but heart problems, strokes and neurological ailments. Now the government made this data publicly available on these big monitors. People saw how much pollution was being created. They themselves started acting upon it and they started shifting from private vehicles to public transport themselves, thus reducing the pollution level. Second, encouraging people to save and invest more. Now this is something which has already been tried and tested. So economists such as Richard Thaler, they developed a program called as Save More Tomorrow. The idea was simple. It was basically to nudge people into taking private pension plans by using behavioral economics. So what did they do? They used the default choice of enrolling people in a pension scheme, which meant that people were automatically enrolled for the pension scheme unless and until they opted out. And the added provision was that they would start off by making small contributions. As and when their wages or salaries rose, their contributions also automatically increased. Very simple, right? What was the result? It was seen that savings contributions actually quadrupled at companies which was using this particular scheme. Well, third and final example is improving civic sense among people. What do you mean by civic sense? This one is my favorite. So civic sense is as simple or as trivial as how to behave in a crowd, keeping your streets litter free, how to maintain hygiene. Let me show you another example. This kind of a box was put in on the streets of London. If you can read it, it says, who is the best player in the world? Ronaldo, Messi. Now football fans, they are known to have very strong opinions on who's the number 1 player of the world. So environmental organizations there, they took advantage of this in a brilliant way. In order to make their player win, people who smoke would actually put in their cigarette butts in one of the two boxes, hence keeping the streets clean. Amazing, isn't it? So to conclude my talk, if policies are drafted with the assumption that human beings are rational, then most of the outcomes may be suboptimal. There is a need to incorporate aspects of behavioral economics and understand how humans actually act. Nudge theory in public policy is a very, very important tool which can actually bring about huge changes. A country like India possesses huge potential and can benefit immensely from appropriate and intelligent use of nudge theory. Now, there can be several questions about whether nudge theory is ethical, whether it is moral to actually nudge people into making a choice, or whether it curbs the freedom of an individual. These questions are very, very pertinent, very important, and do merit a lot of discussion. But in my mind, these kind of questions do not have a right answer. It really depends on how you perceive it. It really depends on your viewpoint. It really depends on what you're using it for. Thus, the point that needs to be focused upon while incorporating nudge theory in public policy is a proper analysis of the outcome of those nudges, their longevity and their impact. Though a very small tool, it can prove to be a very powerful tool and can bring about a very positive change in your individual life as well as in the nation. I hope this gave you something new to think about. I hope that you learned something new from this, and I hope this is the time to nudge yourself into becoming more productive individuals, more positive individuals, and better citizens. Thank you so much.